Marcus stood at the edge of New Geneva spaceport, watching the alien transport ships descend through Earth's atmosphere like silver teardrops against the morning sky. His weathered hands gripped the metal railing, knuckles white with tension that had nothing to do with the cold mountain air. At 42, the former Marine carried himself with the quiet dignity of a man who had seen too much war and found peace in unexpected places. The Galactic Refugee Resettlement Program had been active for 3 years now, ever since humanity joined the Cosmic Alliance. Earth had volunteered to house displaced beings from various conflicts across the galaxy, though most other species considered it a fool's errand. Humans, they said, were too young, too aggressive, too unpredictable to properly care for refugees from more advanced civilizations. Marcus disagreed. He pulled his tablet from his jacket pocket and reviewed the files one more time. 3 Falari females, ages equivalent to human early 20s, rescued from a dying world where a plague had rendered 90% of their species infertile. The Falari were a proud people, resembling Earth's great cats but walking upright with elegant, humanoid features. Their society valued fertility and family above all else, making their current situation particularly tragic. The first file showed Zara, a former engineer with golden fur marked by distinctive black stripes across her face. Her psychological evaluation noted severe depression and withdrawal following the loss of her entire family line's fertility. The second was Kira, smaller in stature with silver-gray fur and bright green eyes, previously a teacher who had specialized in caring for Falari cubs. The third, Naya, possessed deep brown fur with auburn highlights and had been training as a healer before her world's collapse. All 3 had been rejected by potential host families across 17 different worlds. The reason was always the same: their infertility made them unsuitable for integration into family-based societies. They were considered damaged goods, broken beyond repair. Marcus closed the tablet with a soft click. He understood broken. The transport ship settled onto the landing pad with a gentle hiss of hydraulics. Through the observation deck's reinforced glass, Marcus watched as the exit ramp extended and various alien species began to disembark. Most moved with purpose, reuniting with sponsors or heading toward processing centers. But 3 figures remained huddled near the ship's base, clearly uncertain and afraid. Even from a distance, Marcus could see their defeat in the way they held themselves. Shoulders hunched, heads down, tails dragging behind them like afterthoughts. The tallest of the 3, that would be Zara according to the descriptions, kept glancing back at the ship as if hoping she could reboard and disappear into the void of space. Marcus made his way down to the landing area, his prosthetic left leg clicking softly with each step. He had lost the limb during the final battle of the Centauri conflict, along with his wife Sarah and their 8-year-old daughter Emma to a terrorist attack back on Earth while he was deployed. The prosthetic was a reminder that some wounds healed differently than others, but they still healed. Zara, Kira, and Naya, he called out as he approached the 3 Falari women. They turned toward him with expressions of wary confusion. Up close, Marcus could see the exhaustion in their large, expressive eyes that held too much sadness for being so young. Their fur, while clean, lacked the lustrous quality he had seen in photos of healthy Falari. Stress and grief had taken their toll. Zara stepped forward slightly, her golden fur catching the artificial lights of the spaceport. She stood nearly 6 feet tall, with a lean, athletic build that spoke of both grace and strength. "You are Marcus Chen?" she asked, her voice carrying a melodic accent that made English sound like music. "Our sponsor?" The word came out with such uncertainty that Marcus's heart clenched. How many times had these 3 been shuffled from one potential home to another, only to be rejected when their medical conditions became known? "I am," Marcus said simply. "Welcome to Earth." Kira, the smallest of the 3, took a half step behind Zara. Her silver-gray fur was marked with intricate patterns that reminded Marcus of frost on a window. "There has been no mistake," she asked quietly. "You were informed of our condition? You mean that you're infertile?" Marcus asked directly, causing all 3 to flinch as if he had struck them. "Yes, I was informed. I'm also informed that you're intelligent, capable individuals who have been through hell and deserve a chance at peace." Naya, whose rich brown fur gleamed with auburn highlights, exchanged a glance with her companions. "Most humans of this world, they value family creation, yes? Offspring and continuation of genetic lines?" Marcus nodded slowly. Many do. But family isn't always about biology. Sometimes it's about choice. The three Filari women stared at him with expressions he couldn't quite read. Hope warred with disbelief in their faces, as if they had heard pretty words before only to have them proven false. "Come on," Marcus said, gesturing toward the exit. "Let's get you home." The drive to Marcus's house in the Colorado mountains took nearly 2 hours, during which his passengers remained largely silent. They sat together in the back of his modified truck, occasionally murmuring to each other in their native language, a series of soft chirps and purrs that reminded Marcus of earth cats, but more complex and musical. Through the rearview mirror, he watched them take in the scenery. Earth's landscapes were apparently quite different from their home world, which had been mostly desert and crystalline formations. The thick forests, snow-capped peaks, and rushing streams seemed to fascinate them, particularly Naya, who pressed her face to the window like a child seeing snow for the first time. "Your world is very green," Kira observed as they wound up the mountain road toward Marcus's property. "This part is," Marcus replied. "We've got deserts and oceans and Arctic regions too. Lots of variety." "On Phalaris Prime, there was little water," Zara said quietly. "What existed was precious, carefully managed. Here it seems to flow freely." "Water's one thing Earth has plenty of," Marcus agreed. "You'll find it soothing, I think. There's a stream that runs right through my property." The house came into view as they rounded the final curve, a large, rustic structure built from local timber and stone, with wide windows that overlooked the valley below. It had been Sarah's dream home, designed for a large family that would never come to be. Now it served as a reminder that dreams could be repurposed even when they couldn't be fulfilled as originally intended. Marcus pulled into the gravel driveway and turned off the engine. "Home," he said simply. The three Filari women climbed out slowly, their cat-like grace evident in every movement. They stood close together, instinctively protective of one another as they surveyed their new surroundings. Marcus noted how their ears swiveled constantly, picking up sounds from the forest around them, and how their tails twitched with nervous energy. "It's very isolated," Naya observed, though her tone wasn't critical, merely factual. "Nearest neighbors are about 5 miles down the mountain," Marcus confirmed. "I value privacy. Figured you might too, at least while you're adjusting." He led them to the front door, a heavy wooden structure adorned with Sarah's wind chimes that still sang softly in the mountain breeze. "Fair warning," he said as he unlocked the door. "I'm not much of a decorator. The place is functional, but it's not exactly what you'd call stylish." The interior of the house was indeed Spartan but comfortable. Sturdy furniture built to last rather than impress, bookshelves lined with technical manuals and classic literature, and photographs scattered throughout showing Marcus in his military days and happier times with his lost family. The living room featured a massive stone fireplace that dominated one wall, with large windows offering panoramic views of the valley. "There are 4 bedrooms upstairs," Marcus explained, leading them through the main level. "You can each have your own space, or share if you prefer. The kitchen is fully stocked, and I've tried to research Filari dietary requirements, though you'll probably need to guide me on specifics." Zara ran her fingers along the back of a well-worn leather couch, her expression thoughtful. "This was a family home," she said. "It wasn't a question." Marcus paused in his explanation of the house's features. "Yes. My wife designed it. We plan to fill it with children and grandchildren." He gestured to a photo on the mantel showing a blonde woman with laughing eyes holding a little girl with pigtails. "That didn't work out." The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable, it was the shared quiet of beings who understood loss. Kira's green eyes fixed on the photograph with an intensity that suggested she was seeing not just Marcus's family, but perhaps memories of her own. "The plague," Naya said softly. "It took more than fertility from our world. Entire family lines simply ended." The silence where cubs should have been laughing was perhaps worse than the physical symptoms. Marcus nodded slowly. "After Sarah and Emma died, I thought about selling this place. Too many memories, too much empty space. But then, I realized that maybe the memories weren't the problem. Maybe the emptiness was." He showed them to the kitchen, where he had prepared a welcome meal based on his research into Filari nutrition. The spread included various fruits, nuts, and what he hoped were acceptable protein sources. The three women examined the food with polite interest, though he could tell they were too overwhelmed to have much appetite. "I know this is all very new," Marcus said as they sat around the large dining table. "I don't expect you to settle in immediately or pretend everything is fine. Take whatever time you need." Kira looked up from the piece of fruit she had been examining. "What do you expect from us?" she asked. Previous sponsors, they always had expectations. Work to be done, roles to fill, ways we could prove our worth despite our deficiencies. The word hit Marcus like a physical blow. Deficiencies? Is that how you think of yourselves? The three women exchanged glances, communicating in that silent way that people who have survived trauma together often develop. Zara spoke for the group. "We are Falari women who cannot bear cubs. In our society, in most societies we have encountered, this makes us incomplete. Broken. Without purpose." Marcus set down his fork and leaned back in his chair. "Can I tell you what I see when I look at you three?" They waited, ears perked forward with cautious attention. "I see an engineer who probably understands technology one can't even pronounce. I see a teacher who spent her life nurturing young minds. I see a healer who dedicated herself to easing others' suffering." Marcus's voice grew stronger as he continued. "I see three individuals who survived the end of their world and have been strong enough to keep going even when the universe seemed determined to convince them they weren't wanted anywhere." Naya's tail had begun to twitch, a sign of agitation or emotion that Marcus was learning to recognize. "But we cannot provide what most beings seek in family. We cannot continue bloodlines or bear offspring." "Family isn't a bloodline," Marcus said firmly. "Family is what you build with the people who matter to you. It's showing up for each other, caring for each other, creating something together that's bigger than the sum of its parts." He gestured around the empty house. "This place has been waiting for 3 years for the right people to make it feel alive again. I've been waiting for 3 years to remember what it feels like to care about someone other than myself. Maybe we can figure out together what family means when it's not about biology." The silence stretched long enough that Marcus began to wonder if he had overstepped, pushed too hard too fast. Then, Kira's voice broke the quiet, so soft he almost missed it. "On Phalaris Prime, there was a saying, the pack that chooses each other runs faster than the pack bound by blood." She looked up at him with those startling green eyes. "We had forgotten this wisdom in our grief." Zara's golden ears twitched forward. "You truly do not see us as damaged?" "Damaged implies something that was broken and can't be fixed," Marcus replied. "I see you as changed. Changed by experiences that would have destroyed lesser beings. That doesn't make you less than what you were, it makes you something new. Something that maybe the universe needs more than it knows." As the evening progressed, Marcus showed them through the rest of the house. The bedrooms were large and airy, each with its own bathroom and plenty of closet space. He had prepared basic furnishings but emphasized that they should feel free to modify anything to their preferences. "The basement has been converted to a workshop," he explained as they toured the lower level. "I do consulting work for various tech companies, mostly designing adaptive systems for disabled veterans. But there's plenty of space if any of you want to pursue your own projects." Zara's eyes lit up as she examined the well-equipped workshop. "You create prosthetics?" Marcus tapped his artificial leg. "Among other things. Started out just trying to improve my own situation, ended up helping others. Turns out there's a lot of room for innovation when you approach problems from the perspective of someone who's had to adapt." The Falari engineer moved through the workshop with growing excitement, her depression lifting for the first time since Marcus had met her. She examined his designs with the eye of a professional, asking technical questions that revealed the depth of her knowledge. "This integration system," she said, pointing to a blueprint on his drafting table. "It could be improved by approximately 30% efficiency with a bioresponsive feedback loop." Marcus grinned. "Show me." As Zara began sketching modifications to his design, Kira and Naya explored other areas of the basement. They discovered Marcus's small library, his music collection, and the gym where he maintained his physical therapy routines. Each new discovery seemed to ease their tension slightly, as if they were gradually accepting that this might actually be a place where they could belong. "You live here alone?" Naya asked as they returned to the main floor. "For the past 3 years," Marcus confirmed. "Gets quiet sometimes, but I've gotten used to it." The silence, Kira murmured. "It becomes like a weight, does it not? Pressing down until you forget what voices in a home should sound like." Marcus looked at her sharply. This small, silver-furred woman had just articulated something he had felt but never been able to express. Exactly like that. As night fell, they gathered in the living room. Marcus built a fire in the stone fireplace while the 3 Falari women settled onto the large couch together, still unconsciously seeking comfort in proximity. The flickering flames cast dancing shadows on the walls, and, for the first time since their arrival, the house felt less empty. "I should probably explain my ground rules," Marcus said as he settled into his favorite chair across from them. "First, this is your home for as long as you want it to be. I'm not going to kick you out if you have a bad day or if it takes time to adjust. Second, you don't owe me anything. I'm not looking for servants or employees or anything else. You're here because everyone deserves a place to heal and figure out what comes next." He paused to poke at the fire, sending sparks up the chimney. "Third, if you decide this isn't working for you, that's okay too. I'll help you find somewhere else, no questions asked. But I hope you'll give it a real chance first." Zara's golden eyes reflected the firelight as she studied his face. "Why?" she asked simply. "We have been rejected by 17 different potential hosts. Why does a human male with no obligation to us offer what others would not?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment, watching the flames dance and considering his answer. "Because I know what it's like to be told you're broken beyond fixing," he said finally. "I know what it feels like to have people look at you and see only what you can't do anymore, not what you still can. And I know that sometimes the best families are the ones nobody else wanted." Naya leaned forward, her brown fur catching golden highlights from the fire. "Your leg. You lost it in battle?" "Last day of the Centauri conflict," Marcus confirmed. "Stepped on a mine while trying to evacuate civilians from a bombed hospital. Woke up 3 days later to find out I'd lost the leg, the war was over, and my wife and daughter had been killed in a terrorist attack while I was unconscious." The 3 women absorbed this information in silence. Finally, Kara spoke. "How did you survive such loss?" Marcus smiled ruefully. "Badly, at first. Drank too much, pushed everyone away, convinced myself I was better off alone. Took me 2 years to realize that surviving and living aren't the same thing." "What changed?" Zara asked. "Got a call from a buddy's widow. Her kid had been born with a spinal defect, needed adaptive equipment the military medical system couldn't provide. She asked if I could help design something." Marcus gestured toward the basement workshop. "Turned out I had a knack for solving problems other people considered unsolvable. Made me realize that maybe getting broken doesn't mean you're useless, maybe it just means you understand problems other people don't." The fire crackled and popped, filling the comfortable silence that followed. Outside, wind moved through the pine trees with a sound like whispered conversations. It was Naya who spoke next, her voice barely above a whisper. "On Phalaris Prime, before the plague, I was to bond with a male from the northern clans. We had planned for many cubs, a large family to honor both our lineages." She stared into the flames as she spoke. "When the sterility manifested, he chose another. Said he could not waste his genetic potential on one who could not fulfill her biological purpose." Kira's silver tail lashed once, betraying her anger on her friend's behalf. "The male was a fool. Naya's healing abilities were legendary among our people. She could ease pain with touch alone, sense illness before symptoms appeared. These gifts matter nothing if she cannot bear offspring? Where I come from," Marcus said carefully, "we'd call a man who abandons a woman because of medical circumstances a coward. Biology doesn't determine worth." Zara's ears flattened against her skull. Easy words from a species that has not built its entire civilization around fertility and genetic continuation. Falari society values nothing higher than the production of healthy cubs. Everything else is secondary. "Then, maybe Falari society is wrong," Marcus said bluntly. The three women stared at him in shock. For a moment, Marcus wondered if he had gone too far, challenged something too fundamental to their worldview. Then, Zara's mouth curved in what might have been the beginning of a smile. Perhaps, she said slowly, it is time we learn to value ourselves by different standards. As the fire burned down to glowing embers, they talked about practical matters. Work schedules, household responsibilities, local customs they should be aware of. Marcus made it clear that while he appreciated help with daily tasks, their contribution should be based on interest and ability, not obligation. I would like to continue my engineering work, Zara said. Perhaps there are opportunities to collaborate on your adaptive technology projects? I'd welcome the help, Marcus replied. Your biofeedback idea alone could revolutionize prosthetic interfaces. Kira curled her legs under her on the couch. And, teaching? Are there opportunities to work with young humans? The local school district has a chronic shortage of qualified teachers, Marcus assured her. They'd probably throw a parade if you volunteered. Plus, there are several refugee families in the valley whose children could benefit from someone who understands displacement. Naya had been quiet during this exchange, her brown eyes fixed on the dying fire. Healing, she said eventually. My gifts, they may not translate to human physiology. The medical center down in town has been struggling with patient care, Marcus offered. Even if your specific abilities don't work on humans, your knowledge and experience could be invaluable. And, there are other refugee species in the area who might benefit from traditional Fulari healing techniques. As the evening wound down, Marcus showed them the security system and gave them access codes for all areas of the house. I want you to feel safe here, he explained. The system is more comprehensive than most people need, but I learned to be careful after. Standing at the base of the stairs, preparing to retire for their first night in their new home, the three Fulari women seemed different somehow. Not happy, not yet, but perhaps less broken. The crushing weight of rejection and unworthiness that had hung over them at the spaceport had lifted slightly, replaced by something Marcus dared to hope might be the beginning of belonging. Marcus, Zara said as he turned toward his own bedroom. Why did you request specifically infertile females when you submitted your sponsorship application? Marcus paused with his hand on the banister. Because fertility shouldn't be a prerequisite for deserving a home. Because intelligence, kindness, and strength of character matter more than reproductive capability. And, because I figured three women who had been rejected by everyone else might understand what it's like to be seen as broken and might be willing to help prove the universe wrong. He climbed the stairs to his bedroom, leaving the three Fulari women standing together in the soft glow of the dying fire. Through his window, he could see the stars scattered across the clear mountain sky, the same stars that had once shone down on their lost home world, now watching over their tentative new beginning. In the kitchen below, he heard the soft murmur of their voices as they talked quietly among themselves. For the first time in 3 years, Marcus's house was filled with the sound of family, even if it wasn't the family he had originally planned. As he drifted off to sleep, he found himself hoping that tomorrow would bring the first real day of their new life together. The last thing he heard before sleep claimed him was the sound of quiet laughter from downstairs, hesitant and rusty from disuse, but genuine. It was the most beautiful sound his home had heard in years. The morning sun streamed through the large kitchen windows as Marcus prepared breakfast, the familiar routine taking on new meaning with the soft sounds of movement from upstairs. For the first time in 3 years, he was cooking for more than just himself. The simple act of calculating portions for 4 instead of 1 felt both strange and oddly comforting. Zara was the first to appear, her golden fur slightly rumpled from sleep. She moved with the careful grace of someone still adjusting to new surroundings, her large eyes taking in every detail of the kitchen as if memorizing potential escape routes. Good morning, Marcus said, not looking up from the stove where he was preparing what he hoped would be an acceptable Fulari breakfast. Sleep okay? The silence was different, Zara replied after a moment's consideration. Not empty. Peaceful. Marcus glanced at her curiously. Different how? On Phalaris Prime, silence meant death. During the plague years, when the cubs stopped being born, quiet homes became tombs. She accepted the cup of herbal tea he offered, inhaling its steam with obvious appreciation. Here, the silence feels like waiting. As if the house expects good things to fill it. Kara appeared next, her silver-gray fur perfectly groomed despite the early hour. She moved with the unconscious quiet of someone accustomed to not wanting to disturb others, a behavior pattern that made Marcus's chest tighten with recognition. "You don't have to sneak around," he said gently. "This is your home too." Her green eyes widened slightly. "I did not wish to intrude on your morning routine." "You're not intruding. You're participating." Marcus gestured to the breakfast spread he had prepared. "I made enough for everyone. No point in being polite and going hungry." Naya joined them a few minutes later, her brown fur catching auburn highlights in the morning light. She moved with the measured grace of a healer, observing everything with eyes that seemed to see more than the surface. Marcus noticed how she paused to touch the wooden table, the stone countertop, the metal fixtures, as if she was reading the history of the house through tactile contact. "The previous inhabitants were happy here," she said suddenly. "I can sense the echoes of joy in these materials. Love, laughter, contentment." She looked up at Marcus with those perceptive brown eyes. "But, also great sadness. A wound that cuts deep." Marcus set down his coffee mug carefully. "Your healing abilities work on emotions too?" "Emotions leave traces, just like physical pain," Naya explained. "This house holds much love, but it has been empty of it for too long. The absence creates its own kind of ache." They ate breakfast in comfortable conversation, discussing practical matters like shopping for clothes, obtaining local identification, and understanding Earth's refugee integration programs. Marcus had already begun the paperwork to establish them as permanent residents, but there were still various bureaucratic hurdles to navigate. "I've scheduled appointments with the local integration office for next week," Marcus explained. "They'll help you get work permits, social security numbers, and connect you with any services you might need. The process can be frustrating, but the people are generally helpful." Zara looked up from her fruit bowl with interest. "And the engineering opportunities you mentioned?" "There's a defense contractor about 30 minutes down the mountain that specializes in adaptive technologies. I've done consulting work for them before. They're always looking for qualified engineers, especially ones with experience in biointegration systems." Marcus grinned. "Plus, I may have mentioned your biofeedback idea to their lead designer yesterday evening. She's very interested in meeting you." The transformation in Zara's posture was immediate and dramatic. Her ears perked forward, her tail began to twitch with excitement, and, for the first time since Marcus had met her, she looked truly animated. "Really? She wants to discuss technical applications? Really? Dr. Sarah Kim runs their prosthetics division. Lost both legs in a mountaineering accident 5 years ago and has been pushing the boundaries of adaptive technology ever since. I think you two will get along well." After breakfast, Marcus gave them a more thorough tour of the property. The house sat on 40 acres of mountain woodland, with hiking trails, a small lake, and the stream he had mentioned. The 3 Falari women were clearly unused to such abundance of natural space and clean water. Kira knelt beside the stream, dipping her fingers into the clear, cold water with an expression of wonder. "It simply flows," she murmured. "No rationing, no careful allocation. It just is." "One of Earth's advantages," Marcus agreed. "We've got more fresh water than we know what to do with in some places." They spent the morning exploring, with Marcus pointing out various features of the landscape and the women asking questions about Earth's ecology, climate, and wildlife. When they encountered a family of deer grazing near the lake, all 3 Falari froze with fascination. "They are not afraid," Naya observed as the deer continued feeding, barely acknowledging the presence of the observers. "Should they be?" Marcus asked. "On our world, the native fauna learned to fear thinking beings during the plague years," Zara explained. "Desperation drove many to hunt species that had previously been protected. These creatures seem to trust that you mean no harm." Marcus considered this. "Earth has its problems, but we've learned a few things about conservation over the centuries. This area is protected land. The animals know they're safe here." The afternoon brought their first real test of domestic compatibility. Marcus had planned to do some work in his basement workshop, but instead found himself included in what appeared to be a Falari planning session. The three women had taken over his kitchen table and were engaged in what seemed to be a complex discussion about household organization. "We should establish protocols," Zara was saying as Marcus entered the kitchen for a snack. "Cooking schedules, cleaning responsibilities, resource allocation." "This is not a military operation, Zara," Kira replied with gentle amusement. "It is a home. Even homes require structure," Naya added. "But, perhaps structure that grows organically rather than being imposed." Marcus grabbed an apple and listened to their discussion with growing interest. They were trying to figure out how to contribute meaningfully to the household without overstepping boundaries or making assumptions about his expectations. "Can I make a suggestion?" he interjected. Three sets of ears swiveled toward him with immediate attention. "How about we try a week of just living together? See what feels natural, what problems come up, what works and what doesn't. Then, we can talk about formal arrangements if we need them." The women exchanged glances, that silent communication passing between them again. Kira spoke first. "You do not wish to establish clear expectations?" "My expectation is that you'll treat this place like home and each other like family," Marcus said simply. "Everything else is details we can figure out as we go." That evening brought an unexpected visitor. Marcus was reading in the living room while the three Falari women explored his extensive library when a knock at the front door interrupted the peaceful quiet. Through the window, Marcus could see a familiar vehicle in his driveway. "That'll be Dr. Reese," he told his housemates as he moved toward the door. "Local medical officer for the refugee program. Probably wants to check on how you're settling in." Dr. Elizabeth Reese was a stern-faced woman in her 60s who had dedicated her career to refugee health services. She entered the house with the no-nonsense attitude of someone accustomed to dealing with bureaucracy and broken systems. "Marcus," she said by way of greeting, then turned her attention to the three Falari women who had assembled in the living room. "And you must be our new arrivals. I'm Dr. Reese. I'll be handling your medical integration." Marcus watched as his housemates arranged themselves in their unconscious protective formation, with Zara slightly in front of the other two. Their experiences with medical professionals had clearly not been positive. "Is there a problem with our documentation?" Zara asked carefully. Dr. Reese's stern expression softened slightly. "No problem. I make it a policy to personally check on all high-risk placements within the first 48 hours. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. "High risk?" Naya repeated. Marcus felt his jaw tighten. "What exactly makes this a high-risk placement, doctor?" Dr. Reese looked genuinely surprised by the tension her words had created. "Single male sponsor, 3 female refugees with documented psychological trauma and integration challenges." "It's a standard classification, not a value judgment." "We are not psychologically compromised," Kira said with quiet dignity. "Of course not," Dr. Reese replied quickly. "But your files indicate 17 failed placements. That suggests either systemic bias in the selection process or significant adaptation difficulties. I wanted to ensure this placement has the support it needs to succeed." Marcus stepped forward, his military bearing asserting itself. "With respect, doctor, the reason for those failed placements had nothing to do with adaptation difficulties. It had to do with narrow-minded sponsors who couldn't see past a medical condition." Dr. Reese studied his face for a moment, then nodded slowly. "You may be right. But that's exactly why I'm here. To make sure this placement works." Over the next hour, Dr. Reese conducted individual interviews with each of the Falari women, assessing their mental health status and integration progress. Marcus waited in the kitchen, trying not to pace as he listened to the murmur of voices from the living room. When Zara emerged from her session, she looked drained but not distressed. "She is thorough," she told Marcus quietly. "But not unkind. I think she genuinely wishes to help." Kira's interview was shorter, and she came out looking thoughtful rather than upset. Naya's session lasted longest, which made sense given her medical background and the complexity of her healing abilities. Finally, Dr. Reese called Marcus into the living room for a private conversation while the three women retreated to the kitchen to prepare dinner. "They're remarkable," Dr. Reese said without preamble. Intelligent, resilient, remarkably well-adjusted considering what they've been through. But, Marcus, they're also fragile in ways they probably don't recognize. Marcus crossed his arms. Fragile how? They've internalized the rejection they've experienced. All three of them are convinced they're fundamentally flawed, damaged beyond repair. They're waiting for you to realize it too and send them away. That's not going to happen. Good. But, you need to understand that healing from that kind of systematic devaluation takes time. There will be setbacks, moments when they test your commitment to see if you really mean what you say. Dr. Reese gathered her papers and prepared to leave. There's something else. Naya's healing abilities are remarkable. I've never seen anything like them. She was able to detect and partially alleviate chronic pain I've been dealing with for years, just through brief contact. That's a gift that could revolutionize medicine if properly understood and applied. After the doctor left, the four of them ate dinner together on the back deck, watching the sun set over the valley. The tension from the interview had dissipated, replaced by a sense of cautious optimism. Dr. Reese thinks I should document my healing techniques, Naya said as she gazed out at the darkening forest. She believes human medical science could benefit from understanding Filari bioempathic abilities. Would you be interested in that? Marcus asked. Perhaps. But, only if it could help others. I have no desire for fame or recognition. Naya's tail curled around her feet as she considered. For so long, my abilities felt useless because I could not heal the one thing that mattered most, our infertility. It would be meaningful to find ways to help heal other types of pain. Kira set down her water glass and looked thoughtful. Dr. Reese also mentioned educational opportunities. There is a school for refugee children that needs teachers who understand displacement trauma. Sounds perfect for you, Marcus said. I hope so. I have missed working with young minds. Children adapt more quickly than adults, but they also need guidance to process experiences that should not be part of childhood. Zara had been quiet during most of the evening, but now she turned to Marcus with an expression of cautious excitement. Your friend Dr. Kim, when might I meet her? I'll call her tomorrow and set something up. Why? I have been thinking about the biofeedback integration problem. I believe I may have developed a solution that could work with human neural pathways. Zara's golden eyes were bright with enthusiasm. If I am correct, it could reduce prosthetic adaptation time by 70% and increase functionality by nearly 40%. Marcus nearly choked on his drink. 70%? Are you serious? Completely serious. The key is creating a symbiotic interface that learns from the user's natural neural patterns rather than forcing the user to adapt to predetermined parameters. The conversation that followed was highly technical and completely absorbing. Marcus found himself sketching diagrams on napkins as Zara explained her theories, while Kira and Naya offered insights from their own fields of expertise. By the time they moved back inside, they had outlined the framework for what could be a revolutionary advance in prosthetic technology. This could change everything, Marcus said as they settled in the living room. Not just for amputees, but for anyone dealing with mobility limitations, neural interfaces, even cognitive assistive devices. Zara's tail was practically vibrating with excitement. You really think it could work? I think you're a genius, and I think we're going to make a fortune revolutionizing adaptive technology. The word we hung in the air with particular significance. Marcus had said it without thinking, but the implication was clear. He wasn't just offering them shelter, he was offering them partnership, collaboration, a chance to build something meaningful together. Later that night, as they prepared for bed, Naya approached Marcus with a hesitant expression. May I ask you something personal, she said. Sure. Your wife and daughter, do you think they would approve of us being here? Marcus was quiet for a long moment, considering the question seriously. Sarah always said our home was meant to be filled with people who needed it. She used to joke that if she had her way, we'd adopt half the orphans in the state. He smiled at the memory. And Emma. Emma would have been fascinated by you three. She loved learning about different cultures, different ways of seeing the world. Naya's eyes grew bright with unshed tears. You still grieve them. Every day. But, having you here doesn't diminish that grief, it honors it. It turns this house back into what Sarah designed it to be, a place where family takes care of family. Even when that family is chosen rather than born? Especially then, Marcus said firmly. Blood doesn't make family. Love does. Commitment does. Showing up for each other does. The next morning brought their first real challenge. Marcus woke to the sound of raised voices from downstairs, not arguing exactly, but definitely some kind of heated discussion. He found the three Falari women in the kitchen, clearly in the middle of some kind of disagreement. Everything okay? He asked. Kira's silver fur was slightly bristled, a sign of agitation Marcus was learning to recognize. Zara thinks we should contribute financially to household expenses immediately. I believe we should focus on integration first, then worry about economics. And I think we're being treated like charity cases, Zara snapped, her golden tail lashing. We are capable adults, not refugees to be pitted and supported indefinitely. Naya stood between them, her healing instincts clearly activated as she tried to mediate. Both perspectives have merit. We need to balance pride with practicality. Marcus poured himself coffee and leaned against the counter. What brought this on? I was reviewing your household budget files on the computer, Zara said, her engineering mind clearly having been at work. Do you know how much it costs to support 4 people on this property? Food, utilities, maintenance, property taxes, it's significant. And I can afford it, Marcus replied calmly. That's not the point. Zara's frustration was evident in every line of her posture. We can't just be dependents forever. We need to contribute, to have value beyond being objects of your charity. The word charity hit the room like a slap. Marcus set down his coffee mug and studied the three women, seeing past their disagreement to the deeper issues beneath. Is that what you think this is? Charity? Kira's ears flattened against her skull. Are we wrong? Marcus pulled out a chair and sat down at the kitchen table, gesturing for them to join him. After a moment's hesitation, they did. Let me tell you what charity looks like, Marcus said. Charity is giving someone something they haven't earned and don't deserve because you feel sorry for them. Charity creates dependence and resentment because it's fundamentally unequal. He looked around the table at their attentive faces. What we're doing here isn't charity. It's investment. I'm investing in you three because I believe you have incredible potential that's been wasted by a universe too stupid to recognize it. And I'm investing in myself, because I need family as much as you do. Zara's tail had stopped lashing, but her expression remained skeptical. Investment implies expectation of return. Exactly. I expect you to use your talents to their fullest extent. I expect you to contribute your knowledge, skills, and perspectives to whatever projects we take on. I expect you to challenge me when I'm wrong and support me when I'm right. Marcus smiled. And I expect you to help me turn this house back into a home. But, financially, Zara began. Financially, we're going to be partners. Zara, your biofeedback integration system could make us all wealthy if we market it properly. Kira, the refugee education program pays consulting fees that could more than cover your expenses. Naya, if you're willing to work with the medical center, they've got grant funding for alternative therapy research. Marcus leaned back in his chair. But, even if none of that works out, even if we never make a dime off your talents, you still wouldn't be charity cases. You'd be family contributing whatever you can, whenever you can, however you can. Some days that might be money, some days it might be cooking dinner or fixing the plumbing or just being here when someone needs to talk. The silence that followed was thoughtful rather than tense. Finally, Naya spoke up. In Falari culture, family obligation is reciprocal but not transactional. Each member contributes according to their abilities and receives according to their needs. Sounds like a pretty good system to me, Marcus agreed. Kira's green eyes were bright with something that might have been hope. You truly see us as partners? Not just recipients of your generosity? I see you as three brilliant women who've been told they're worthless for so long they've started to believe it, Marcus said bluntly. I see you as the missing pieces that could make this place everything it was meant to be. Zara stood up abruptly and began pacing, her engineering mind clearly working through the implications. If we're partners, then we need formal agreements. Intellectual property rights, profit sharing, decision-making protocols. Marcus grinned. Now you're thinking like an entrepreneur. The rest of the morning was spent outlining what their partnership might look like. Zara would work with Marcus on developing and marketing her prosthetic innovations. Kara would develop educational programs for refugee children while consulting with local schools. Naya would explore medical applications of her healing abilities while building a practice that could serve both human and alien communities. We'll need proper documentation, Zara said, her excitement growing as they sketched out their plans. Patents, business licenses, professional certifications. I can help with all of that, Marcus assured her. I've got lawyers, accountants, connections in the relevant industries. By lunchtime, they had outlined the framework for what could become a significant business enterprise. But, more importantly, they had established themselves as a team with shared goals and mutual respect. That afternoon, Dr. Sarah Kim arrived for her meeting with Zara. A dynamic woman in her 40s with close-cropped black hair and a no-nonsense attitude, she maneuvered her advanced prosthetic legs with casual grace as she toured Marcus's workshop. Marcus has been raving about your biofeedback theories, she told Zara as they examined prosthetic interfaces. I have to admit, I'm skeptical. We've been trying to crack adaptive neural interfacing for years. Zara's golden eyes lit up with the light of intellectual battle. May I see your current best interface design? What followed was a technical discussion that left Marcus struggling to keep up. Zara examined Dr. Kim's prosthetics with the intense focus of an expert, asking detailed questions about response times, adaptation curves, and user experience. The problem, Zara said finally, is that you're trying to train the user to speak the machine's language instead of teaching the machine to understand the user's language. Dr. Kim raised an eyebrow. Explain. Zara moved to Marcus's drafting table and began sketching rapidly. Human neural patterns are as individual as fingerprints. Current prosthetics use standardized interface protocols that force users to develop new neural pathways to control artificial limbs. But, what if the prosthetic could learn to interpret the user's existing neural patterns? Impossible. The variations are too complex. Not impossible. Difficult, but not impossible. Zara's sketch was becoming increasingly detailed. Folari bioengineering focuses on symbiotic adaptation. We learn to work with biological systems instead of trying to control them. Marcus watched Dr. Kim's expression change from skepticism to fascination as Zara explained her theories. By the time the Folari engineer had finished her presentation, the human doctor was leaning forward with intense interest. This could work, Dr. Kim said slowly. It would require completely rethinking our approach to neural interfacing, but this could actually work. More than work, Zara replied confidently. It could revolutionize the entire field of assistive technology. Dr. Kim turned to Marcus. I want to offer her a position. Senior engineer, full benefits, research budget, lab access. Generous offer, Marcus replied, but I think you're thinking too small. What do you mean? Marcus looked at Zara, who nodded encouragingly. What if instead of hiring her as an employee, you partnered with us as co-developers? Joint venture, shared patents, equal partnership in whatever we create. Dr. Kim was quiet for a long moment, clearly running calculations in her head. That's actually brilliant. We get access to revolutionary technology, you get access to our manufacturing capabilities and market connections. She grinned. I think my board of directors is going to love this. As Dr. Kim prepared to leave, she pulled Marcus aside. That woman is extraordinary. I've never seen anyone grasp complex biomechanical principles so quickly or propose solutions so elegant. She paused. But, more than that, she's passionate about helping people. You can see it in her eyes when she talks about reducing adaptation time and improving functionality. She's not just brilliant, she cares. After Dr. Kim left, the four housemates gathered on the back deck to debrief the meeting. Zara was practically vibrating with excitement, her natural enthusiasm finally breaking through the shell of depression and self-doubt she had carried for so long. She wants to start development immediately, Zara reported. Full lab access, unlimited research budget, direct pipeline to clinical trials. That's wonderful, Naya said warmly. You'll be helping people who have lost limbs regain full functionality. We'll be helping them, Zara corrected. This is a partnership. All of us. Marcus felt a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with the afternoon sun. For the first time since Sarah and Emma died, he was part of something bigger than himself, something that could make a real difference in the world. So what's next? Kira asked. Marcus looked around at his 3 housemates, no, his partners, his chosen family. Next, we change the world. Together. That evening, they celebrated with an impromptu barbecue on the deck. Marcus grilled local trout he had caught in their lake while the 3 Falari women prepared side dishes that blended their native cuisine with earth ingredients. The result was a meal unlike anything any of them had experienced before, a fusion that somehow captured the essence of both worlds. As night fell and they sat around the fire pit Marcus had built years ago but rarely used, the conversation turned to deeper matters. I have been thinking about Dr. Reese's suggestion, Naya said as she stared into the flames. About documenting my healing abilities for human medical science. Having second thoughts? Marcus asked. Not second thoughts. But I want to ensure that any knowledge I share is used ethically. Healing should not be commodified or restricted to those who can afford it. Kira nodded thoughtfully. The same concern applies to education. If I develop new techniques for helping refugee children adapt, those methods should be freely available to anyone who needs them. And medical technology, Zara added. Our biofeedback system could help millions of people, but only if it's accessible and affordable. Marcus poked at the fire, sending sparks up into the star-filled sky. So we make that a condition of all our partnerships. Open-source knowledge sharing, affordable access, ethical applications. You would give up potential profits to ensure broad access? Naya asked. Some things are more important than profit, Marcus replied. Besides, there's more than one way to be successful. If we can help people while making enough money to continue our work, that's success enough for me. The fire crackled and popped as they sat in comfortable silence, each lost in their own thoughts. Finally, Zara spoke up. Marcus, may I ask you something? Of course. When you submitted your application to sponsor refugees, did you know it would be us specifically? Or were you simply willing to help whoever needed it? Marcus considered the question carefully. I knew I wanted to help people who had been rejected by the system. When I read your files, I knew you were exactly who I was hoping to find. But, why us specifically? What made you think we would work well together? Marcus smiled into the fire. Because you reminded me of myself. Intelligent, capable, resilient, but convinced you were broken beyond fixing. I figured if I could learn to see past my own supposed deficiencies, maybe I could help you see past yours. Kira's soft voice carried clearly in the mountain air. Do you still think of yourself as deficient? Sometimes, Marcus admitted. But less often now. Having you 3 here has reminded me that being different doesn't mean being less than. It just means being uniquely equipped to solve problems other people can't. The pack that chooses each other runs faster than the pack bound by blood, Naya murmured, repeating Kira's earlier quote. Speaking of packs, Marcus said, I think we need to talk about what we call ourselves. Partners, family, housemates, we need a term that fits what we actually are. Zara's golden eyes reflected the firelight. What we are is something new. Something that didn't exist before we came together. Then, maybe we need a new word, Kira suggested. They spent the rest of the evening debating terminology, but eventually settled on the simple truth: they were family. Not related by blood or species, but bound by choice, mutual respect, and shared purpose. As they prepared for bed, Marcus realized that for the first time in 3 years, he was looking forward to tomorrow. Not just enduring it, not just getting through it, but actually excited about what they might accomplish together. Standing at his bedroom window, looking out at the stars that had once seemed cold and distant, Marcus felt a sense of completion he hadn't expected. His house was full of voices again, his workshop was full of revolutionary ideas, and his life was full of purpose. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, and new adventures. But, tonight, he was simply grateful to be part of something bigger than himself again. Tonight, he was home. 6 months after the 3 Filari women first set foot on Marcus's mountain property, the world had taken notice. The breakthrough in biofeedback prosthetic technology had made international headlines. The revolutionary approach to refugee education was being implemented across 12 different countries, and Naya's collaboration with human medical researchers was producing results that challenged everything the scientific community thought they knew about healing. But success brought its own challenges. Marcus stood in the newly expanded workshop, watching Zara fine-tune the latest prototype of their neural interface system. The basement had been converted into a state-of-the-art laboratory, complete with fabrication equipment, testing chambers, and a direct communications link to Dr. Kim's facility down the mountain. 3 major corporations had made acquisition offers, and the patent applications were drawing interest from medical technology companies worldwide. The response time is down to 0.003 seconds, Zara announced, her golden fur practically glowing with satisfaction. That's faster than natural neural transmission in most cases. Marcus examined the data on her screen. Impressive. Dr. Kim's clinical trials are showing adaptation rates nobody thought were possible. It's working exactly as I theorized, Zara said, but her tone was oddly flat despite the triumph. Marcus looked at her more closely. That should make you happy. It does. Of course it does. Zara's tail twitched with nervous energy. It's just overwhelming sometimes. 6 months ago, I was considered worthless. Now humans are calling me a genius and offering me research positions at universities I'd never heard of. You were always a genius, Marcus reminded her. The only thing that's changed is that people are finally paying attention. The workshop door opened and Kara descended the stairs, carrying a tablet and wearing an expression of barely contained excitement. The preliminary results from the Prague implementation are extraordinary, she announced. Refugee children who were considered unadaptable are not only integrating successfully, but they're outperforming their native-born peers in several metrics. That's wonderful, Marcus said, but he noticed the same undertone of uncertainty in Kara's voice that he'd detected in Zara's. The European Union wants to implement the program across all member nations, Kara continued. They're offering funding for a comprehensive rollout, training programs for local educators, even a permanent position coordinating refugee education policy. Marcus raised an eyebrow. That sounds like an incredible opportunity. It is, Kara agreed. It's everything I could have hoped for when we first discussed my teaching ambitions. But? Marcus prompted. Kira's silver ears flattened slightly. But it would require relocating to Brussels. Full-time position, extensive travel throughout Europe, complete immersion in human political and educational systems. The implications hung in the air like a weight. Marcus felt his chest tighten with a familiar sensation, the fear of losing family all over again. What does your heart tell you? He asked carefully. My heart is conflicted, Kara admitted. The work is important. These children need advocates who understand their experiences. But you'd be leaving us, Zara finished. Before Kara could respond, Naya appeared at the workshop entrance. Her brown fur was damp with exertion, and her eyes held the satisfied glow that always followed a successful healing session. How did the treatment go? Marcus asked. Remarkable progress, Naya reported. Mrs. Patterson's arthritis responded better than expected. The human neural pathways are more adaptable to bioempathic healing than I initially theorized. She paused, studying the faces around her. Have I interrupted something important? Kira's been offered a position with the European Union, Zara explained. Coordinating refugee education policy across multiple nations. Naya's expression grew thoughtful. A position that would require leaving Earth? Leaving here, Kara corrected softly. Leaving you. All of you. The workshop fell silent except for the hum of electronic equipment and the distant sound of whine through the trees outside. Marcus felt the familiar weight of impending loss, but this time it was tempered by something else, pride. "That's incredible, Kara," he said finally. 6 months ago, you were convinced you had nothing to offer the universe. Now the European Union wants to build their entire refugee education program around your innovations." Kara's green eyes searched his face. "You think I should take it?" Marcus took a deep breath, pushing down his selfish desire to keep his chosen family intact. "I think you should do whatever feels right for you. But I also think we need to have a family meeting about what's happening to all of us." An hour later, they were gathered around the kitchen table with cups of tea and a pile of official correspondence that had accumulated over the past week. Marcus had been putting off this conversation, hoping the various offers and opportunities would somehow resolve themselves without forcing difficult decisions. "Okay," he said, spreading the papers across the table. "Let's lay it all out. Kira's got the EU offer. Zara, you've had 3 different university research positions offered, plus 2 corporate headhunting attempts. Naya, the World Health Organization wants you to head their new alternative medicine research division." The 3 Falari women stared at the collection of letters, emails, and official documents that represented more recognition and opportunity than any of them had ever imagined possible. "And what about you?" Naya asked. "Surely you've received offers as well." Marcus pulled out his own stack of correspondence. Defense contractor positions, technology consulting offers, even a few teaching opportunities at engineering schools. He looked around the table. "The biofeedback system has made all of us very sought after in our respective fields." Zara's golden tail curled around her feet. "But accepting any of these positions would mean breaking up the family we've built," Kara finished quietly. The silence stretched uncomfortably. Finally, Naya spoke up. "Perhaps this is inevitable. We came together during a crisis, when we all needed healing and support. Now that we're healed, maybe it's natural for us to pursue separate paths." "Is that what you want?" Marcus asked. "What I want and what is practical may be different things," Naya replied. "I want to help people, to use my abilities to reduce suffering wherever possible. But I also want to maintain the bonds we've forged." Zara leaned back in her chair, her engineering mind clearly working through the problem. "The offers assume we would work independently. But what if we approached them differently?" "How so?" Marcus asked. "What if instead of accepting individual positions, we negotiated partnerships? Joint ventures that allow us to work together while still pursuing our separate specialties?" Kira's ears perked up with interest. "You mean create our own organization? Why not?" Zara's excitement was growing. "We've already proven we work well together. Our combined expertise covers education, technology, medicine, and business development. We could be more effective as a team than any of us could be individually." Marcus felt hope beginning to stir. "What would that look like?" "A consulting organization focused on refugee integration and adaptive technology," Zara said, her thoughts racing. "Based here, but with the capability to deploy anywhere in the galaxy where our services are needed. We could develop comprehensive integration programs that address educational, medical, and technological needs simultaneously," Kara added, her silver eyes bright with possibility. "And we could ensure that any innovations we develop are implemented ethically and accessibly," Naya concluded. Marcus grinned. "So instead of being employees, we become employers." The conversation that followed was energetic and wide-ranging. They sketched out organizational structures, discussed funding mechanisms, and debated the practical challenges of running an interplanetary consulting firm. But underneath the planning was a deeper current, the relief of finding a solution that didn't require them to sacrifice their family bonds for their professional ambitions. "We'd need proper legal structure," Zara said. "Corporate registration, interspecies business licenses, intellectual property agreements. And office space," Kara added. "We can't run a galactic organization from Marcus's basement, no matter how well equipped it is." "The old mining facility about 10 miles down the valley is for sale," Marcus suggested. large enough for offices, laboratories, and residential quarters for visiting clients or staff. Residential quarters? Naya asked. Some of the refugees we work with might need temporary housing during integration. Plus, if we're taking on galactic clients, we'll need places for them to stay during extended consulting engagements. As the day progressed, their ambitious plans took on increasing detail and structure. They researched legal requirements, explored funding options, and began reaching out to potential clients and partners. By evening, they had outlined the framework for what could become a significant enterprise. Chen Integration Solutions, Zara proposed as they sat around the fire pit that night. Why Chen? Kira asked. Because Marcus took us in when nobody else would, Zara replied simply. Because this family started with his choice to see value where others saw deficiency. Marcus felt his throat tighten with emotion. It should be all of our names. Chunzara Kira Naya Integration Solutions? Naya laughed. That's unwieldy. How about just Family Solutions? Marcus suggested. Because that's what we really are, a family that solves problems together. They spent the next week drafting business plans and reaching out to the various organizations that had been courting them individually. The response was overwhelmingly positive. The European Union was intrigued by the possibility of implementing comprehensive integration programs rather than just educational components. The medical technology companies were excited about working with a team that could handle both the engineering and medical aspects of adaptive systems. Even the World Health Organization expressed interest in contracting with an organization that could provide holistic solutions to refugee health challenges. But the real test came when representatives from the Galactic Refugee Council arrived for a site visit. Marcus stood on the front porch, watching an elegant transport ship settle onto their improvised landing pad. The visitors emerged with the measured dignity of career diplomats: Ambassador Zara, a tall, blue-skinned humanoid who served as the Council's liaison to Earth, Dr. Kelson, an insectoid being who managed refugee medical services, and Professor Vane, an energy being contained in a mobile crystalline matrix who specialized in integration policy. Impressive location, Ambassador Zara observed as she approached the house. Remote enough for privacy, but accessible enough for practical operations. We value our privacy, Marcus agreed. But we're always available when people need help. The tour that followed showcased not just their current capabilities, but their vision for the future. Zara demonstrated the latest prosthetic interface prototypes, explaining how the technology could be adapted for dozens of different alien physiologies. Kira presented her educational methodologies, showing how trauma-informed teaching could accelerate integration while preserving cultural identity. Naya offered a healing session to Ambassador Zara, who had been suffering from chronic pain related to her species' difficult adaptation to Earth's gravity. Remarkable, Dr. Kelson buzzed through his translation device after observing Naya's work. Bioempathic healing of this sophistication could revolutionize refugee medical care across the galaxy. Professor Vane's crystalline form pulsed with approving colors as they examined Marcus's workshop. The integration of multiple specialties under unified leadership is precisely what refugee services have been lacking. Too often, we address symptoms rather than systems. The real moment of truth came during dinner, as the visitors experienced the family dynamic that made everything else possible. They witnessed the easy camaraderie between species, the way problems were approached collaboratively, and the obvious care the four housemates had for each other. This is what we need, Ambassador Zara said as the evening wound down. Not just your individual talents, but your approach. You're proof that integration doesn't require assimilation, that diversity strengthens rather than weakens. Dr. Kelson's compound eyes fixed on each of them in turn. The Council has been struggling with refugee integration rates across 17 different worlds. Traditional approaches have success rates below 40%. Your preliminary data suggests we could achieve success rates above 90%. Professor Vane's form pulsed with excited energy. We are prepared to offer you a 5-year contract as the Council's primary integration consultants. Funding for facilities, staff, equipment, and operational expenses. Complete autonomy over methodology and implementation. Marcus looked around the table at his three partners, seeing excitement and determination in their faces. What would that involve? Travel to various worlds dealing with refugee crises, Ambassador Zara explained. Assessment of local conditions, development of customized integration programs, training of local staff, and ongoing support as programs are implemented. And we'd work together? Kira asked. As a team? Together, separately, however, proves most effective for each situation, Dr. Kelson assured her. The key is your collaborative approach and comprehensive perspective. After the visitors departed the next day, the four partners gathered in the living room to process the magnitude of what they had been offered. It's everything we discussed, Zara said, her golden eyes bright with excitement. The chance to help refugees across the galaxy while working together. And it validates our approach, Kara added. Proves that what we've built here isn't just personally meaningful, but professionally revolutionary. Naya curled up in her favorite chair, her brown fur catching the afternoon light. But it also means leaving this place that has become home to us. Marcus felt the weight of that truth. The house, the mountain, the property where they had healed and grown and become family, leaving it would be painful. Maybe we don't have to choose, he said slowly. Maybe this place becomes our home base, the center we always return to between missions. You mean maintain the house as our permanent residence while traveling for work? Zara asked. Why not? We've proven we work well together in close quarters. Having a consistent home base would provide stability and continuity no matter where our work takes us. The more they discussed it, the more sensible it seemed. The house could serve as their headquarters, their refuge, and their center of operations. They could take on missions lasting anywhere from weeks to months, then return home to rest, recharge, and prepare for the next assignment. It would mean modifying the house, Kira pointed out. Office space, communications equipment, more sophisticated laboratory facilities. And expanding the landing pad to handle larger transport ships, Naya added. All doable, Marcus said. The question is, are we ready to take on the galaxy? They spent the evening walking the property, saying goodbye to the quiet life they had built while preparing to embrace the adventure ahead. As they stood by the stream where they had first begun to understand what family meant, Marcus reflected on how much had changed in 6 months. Are you nervous? He asked. Terrified, Zara admitted. 6 months ago, I was considered damaged goods. Now we're about to become the galaxy's premier refugee integration specialists. 6 months ago, we were all broken in our own ways, Kira said softly. Now we're about to help heal the galaxy's broken places. The galaxy needs what we've learned, Naya added. That being different doesn't mean being deficient. That chosen family can be stronger than blood family. That healing happens when people feel valued for who they are, not judged for what they lack. Marcus nodded, feeling the truth of her words. Sarah and Emma would be proud, he said quietly. They'd love knowing this house is still serving its purpose, bringing people together and sending them out to make the world better. The next morning brought a communication from the Galactic Council with their first assignment, a refugee crisis on Kepler 442b involving 3 different species who had been displaced by a stellar collision. Traditional integration efforts had failed completely, with the refugees unable to coexist peacefully and local populations growing increasingly hostile. Sounds like exactly the kind of challenge we're built for, Marcus said as they reviewed the mission briefing. Multiple species, complex trauma, failed previous attempts, Zara enumerated. Perfect. They spent the following weeks preparing for departure. The house was modified with improved communication systems and expanded workshop space. The property was secured and automated systems were installed to maintain it during their absence. Most importantly, they established protocols for staying connected as a family even when separated by the vast distances of space. Remember, Marcus said as they gathered their gear for the journey, we're not just consultants on this mission. We're ambassadors for a new way of thinking about family, belonging, and home. The pack that chooses each other, Kira quoted. Runs faster than the pack bound by blood, the other 3 finished in unison. Standing on the landing pad as their transport ship prepared for departure, Marcus looked back at the house that had transformed them all. It stood solid and welcoming against the mountain backdrop, waiting patiently for their return. It will be here when we get back, Naya said, reading his thoughts. I know, Marcus replied. And so will we. All of us. The transport ship lifted off smoothly, carrying them toward their first mission as Family Solutions, Incorporated. But, more than that, it was carrying them toward their destiny as proof that the galaxy's broken places could be healed by people who understood brokenness and had learned to transform it into strength. As Earth fell away beneath them and the stars opened up ahead, Marcus felt a deep sense of completion. He had found his family in the most unlikely circumstances, had seen them discover their own worth, and was now accompanying them on a journey to help others do the same. The galaxy was full of refugees who had been told they were broken, worthless, without value. But now there was a team dedicated to proving that assessment wrong. A team that understood that sometimes the best families were the ones nobody else wanted. Next stop, Kepler 442b, the pilot announced. Marcus settled back in his seat and smiled. "They're coming home," he said quietly. Zara looked at him curiously. "Who's coming home?" "All of them," Marcus replied, thinking of the countless refugees they would help, the families they would reunite, the hope they would restore. "Everyone who's been told they don't belong anywhere. We're going to show them they're wrong." The ship jumped to faster-than-light travel, carrying them toward their first mission. Behind them, Earth continued its ancient orbit around the sun. And, on a mountain in Colorado, a house waited patiently.